Hello and welcome to episode 408 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, the place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt, and joining me as always is the creator of the comic series Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And he certainly loves a plate of bangers and mash. It's Tony Esmond.
Veggie bangers, my friend.
Oh, always veggie bangers for you, isn't it?
Yeah. I told you about bangers and mash before, haven't I?
Met up, didn't we, in London yesterday for some food and comics.
Yeah.
And that was great fun.
Yeah, we had a nice little day in town.
Unfortunately,
he wasn't there.
I was about to say I wasn't there, which is why they had fun.
He's texting us, though. I was texting him pictures of Dan's book choices in bookshops.
Yeah.
We sitting in the restaurant, there was a dead pigeon on the street outside. People would come up taking pictures of that.
With a dead pigeon?
Yeah.
And the only thing about when we got out there, it had been cleaned up, hadn't it? Otherwise, we'd have had a picture with it. So
you would have had a picture with it. What is that?
Dead pigeon.
Is that what the attractions of London are now?
Yeah, dead pigeons.
I can imagine you sort of take the photo, you put it into Instagram, like cut down all the, desaturate it, put out the contrast, and go like London, the real London hashtag.
Gangster.
Yeah, so this is what it's all about.
I killed this pigeon.
Artistic.
Just in case that anyone worries, no pigeons were harmed in the making of this podcast or in the nonsense that these lot got up to yesterday.
One other bit of nonsense I said when, like, it's a burger restaurant and the man said, "How would you like your burger? Like done all the way through or like half cooked, whatever?" And it's like,
hang on, are those the choices, Dan? I'm glad you're
not. Like medium, rare. Medium.
Yeah.
Like this is a burger; it's not a steak. You cook it all the way through. If you don't cook it all the way through, like the people you're serving it to, are going to get food poisoning.
And he annoyed me because he tried to take my plate before I'd finished, and then he says, "I tried to pay in cash. We don't take cash." Fuck off.
First, it's not cooking burgers all the way through. Next, it's not taking cash.
Welcome to the show, everyone.
Yeah.
As you can tell, we've got
to start off silly.
Yeah, we've got a great show for you this week. We just finished having a brilliant chat with Wolfgang Crowe, owner of the best name ever.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and also the creator of an absolutely fantastic book, that Fractures, that we're going to be talking about.
We go deep, my friends.
We do indeed, and it was a fantastic chat. And speaking of fantastic, do you know what I think is also really fantastic?
Me?
Comic House.
So, yeah, Comic House as well. Comic House, of course, are our sponsors.
You mentioned Tony reading Comic House. That's even better.
Oh, my word. Be
in a pair
still.
of shorts, in the garden, couple of beers.
Calm down. Hold on. Check my blood pressure.
Easy.
That's what Comic House will do, dear. They are an indie comic marketplace with a difference because they love indie comics as much as we do and as much as you do, because that's why you listen to this show. There's a huge selection of titles on their database. If you self-publish yourself and you want to get your work out to a bigger audience, you can list your book on there and you can start selling it straight away. But also, get your digital copies onto the Comic House app. It's brilliant. Basically, on Netflix comics, only £3 a month. You get access to an enormous library of digital indie comics that's been added to all the time. Guests, past, present, no doubt future, have been on there, as well as us. We've got some stuff on there as well. So if you like what you hear on this show, why don't you go on a Comic House and do a bit of a search? You never know, you'll find some absolute gold on there, all kinds of stuff. So there's a 14-day free trial, and to find out more, just go to comichouse.com and find out today. And thank you to Pete and the Comic House team, as always, for sponsoring the show. We're not going to there's going to be some tomfoolery and some awesome recommendations, of course, at the tail end of the show. But we're not going to.
Before we go in, do we want to give this number out?
Well, to lead into it, obviously, what you're about to hear is a fantastic discussion about the book Fractures. It's also, we talk about some serious topics here, and we're all about being informative on this show and helping people. And as such, Tony, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we do talk about some troubling issues in this, and we do talk about some stuff that might be upsetting, but perhaps sometimes it's worth hearing, I think. If anything in this, if you've suffered from anything similar to what we talk about in the interview, or, you need to talk to someone, then please go to mind.org.uk. You can also reach them on 0300 123 3393. That's 0300 123 3393. If you're having any other issues, the Samaritans, I've got a friend who's a Samaritan. She's great. You can go to 116 123, and that's in the UK. So go and try those. But yeah, this is a great interview, man. I was really impressed with this dude.
Yes,
yes,
very much so.
Yeah.
And as such, here is our brilliant chat with the one and only Wolfgang Crowe. Okay, folks, this week we are very pleased to be joined by the creator behind the phenomenal comic series Fractures. It's Wolfgang Crowe, or as we know him, because now he's a friend of the show, just Wolf. Welcome to the show.
Wolf, how cool.
Hello.
Hello, man. Good to have you on. Good to have you on.
It's really a pleasure.
It's truly another example on this podcast of just discovering a comic out of nowhere and finding out more about the creator, and just the book itself that we're going to be talking a little bit more is absolutely phenomenal, and just it's one of the best things.
Down to Tom and the Collossive, Tom was the one who mentioned it on the Slack to me. That's why I got a copy of it originally. Yeah, he's your publisher.
Yeah,
they're good dudes, aren't they?
Fantastic, honestly. I can't say how good they are. Like the praise I can give them,
Good man.
Yeah. They really enabled me just to put myself out there.
Yeah. And it's certainly, and we'll get into the book soon enough. And it's as you say, you put yourself out there, and it's a very personal, autobiographical sort of tale in some ways. So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about autobiographical books as well, because Wolf also helps teach them, which is so they'll be able to tell us a few things about it, because as you know, the hosts of this show know nothing. That's why we get guests on.
Well, we do know to get guests on.
We know to get guests on. But just to get us started, and so that the listeners get to know you a bit better, like, how did your sort of journey in comics start up until this point, Wolf?
God, I've always been interested in comics. I used to read like Spawn and like Sandman when I was like 6. I used to steal them from my brother.
Oh dear.
I used to steal them from my brother because I wasn't cool enough to go to the shops alone. I used to draw when I was a kid, and really my sort of exploration to comics was a sideline from a main job. I used to be a storyboard artist. Mostly just TV commercials here and there.
Okay.
And I found it quite limiting in the aspect of, like, you can't tell a lot of nuance in the formats. It's going to be translated to the screen. It isn't meant for the consumption of somebody's own pace.
It's kind of not meant to be sequential in the same way a comic is, I'm guessing. Is that how I'm going to say it? Yeah.
You're very right.
Right.
Where was I?
So you're a storyboard artist. Where do you go from there?
I found it incredibly limiting, and I literally had a crisis. Basically, I had a moment of like real doubt. Like, what was I doing with my life? Was this what I wanted to do? Am I good enough? Do I have anything worth saying? And I knew I needed to really sort myself out. So I basically went to a psychologist, and I showed them all my comic book work, and they were very, very kind. They looked at my work, and they asked me, like, where was I in it? And I was really perplexed by that question. Where was I in it? And they said, there's no inner reflection of your life or beliefs or
interesting.
That is brilliant. That's like a portfolio review by a psychologist.
It really was.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
And that's also, like, you hear, a psychologist saying that, and that's very different. And I'm sure there's a lot of artists listening now that when they showed their art teacher, the run-ins that we've all had with an art teacher who look at your comic book work or your sequential work and immediately go, well, that's not real art. Do you know what I mean? It's very different. It's unusual to get that response. A very different perspective. Fascinating.
But to me as well, it's like I have this theory that I can tell a little bit about the artist in some strange way by their art. So there's your personality. Once you get more freer in your line, and it's more you feel free to put down on the page what you want to put down on the page. There's a personality in people's, if you take, for example, George Perez's, attention to detail, for example, or Sienkiewicz's, flow of emotion and, free form drawing and stuff like that. There's something about you. Did you learn something about yourself in that way, Wolf? Or?
Yeah, I really did.
Right.
It's quite a shock to the system, because I realized, I spent all these years, freelancing, doing all this stuff, and I never actually spoke about myself or really talked about any of the things that I knew well. And you're right, in some aspects, artists do self-portraits in all their work, you know?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
But I will say this, hand on heart, I had a problem. I could not talk about myself.
Were you a bit blocked, do you think?
Still do.
Maybe? Yeah.
Yeah. Blocked is probably the most kindest word, I would say.
Right. Okay.
I was gonna lay down my pencil, you know. I was just not gonna do anymore. And they said to me, like, you need to, you know, think about what you want to say and where to say it. And I thought about basically my university experience, because that was the last time I felt true to myself and able to really express without you know, being paid to make art for people. And and I went back to university, and I did my master's degree during COVID.
Okay.
So what, in order to find your art more fulfilling, was it? And what kind of masters was it you did?
It was a master's in illustration, and it really was just to try and like figure out, am I going to be an artist anymore?
Okay.
Right.
So at that point, had you not considered, I'm going to do anything, a comic about myself, and explore that side until that was put to you? Because to be fair, I've never considered that myself. And so did that come as a bit of a kind of out of left field?
It really was, you know, and it was so obvious that I've been needing to speak about things for a long time, and as a you know, my life, I've always been told not to emote as a man, as a son. So to talk about yourself, especially you know, the personal thinkings or thoughts behind your actions or just your being, it was very alien.
Yeah.
Okay. So the art was symbolistic of the repression that you were forcing on yourself. You're saying something.
Extremely.
Yeah, interesting.
And also the page, be it whether it's a sketchbook or a comic page, is a public space, isn't it? It's a very once it's down on the page,
especially when you're putting it out to the public to see. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's something that I've only recently sort of started to learn and respect and really appreciate the response and responsibility of telling a true and helpful story.
I'll take my hat off, because I'm not sure if I've got the kind of strength of character to be that real and put that stuff on the page. So
I couldn't. I've tried it. I can't do it. Yeah,
I can't take my hat off to you and anyone that does it.
Sorry, I disagree. I think everybody can tell a story, and it only takes the right encouragement and time to do so.
Interesting. So we talked a little. I know we had a little bit of a chat beforehand, Wolf, about putting yourself out there. Now, you really did that with this story. So when you went back to do your masters, was that after or before this event that you describe in Fractures had happened?
So the event itself happened in 2015. And
so it was after that. Yeah.
I graduated in 2016, I believe. Oh, that's been a long time. I did my master's during COVID, so it all happened previously.
So do you think that was one of the reasons you couldn't feel freer on a page? Something.
It no joke about lie. The hate crime itself, it did mute my voice for a very long time, and being able to even talk about it was, you know, people don't want to listen to this sort of stuff, and that's kind of absurd, because if we don't talk about things, they don't get better. Really,
I disagree. I think a lot of autobiographical comics aren't honest enough. We talked about this before we started about the airbrushing of comics. I think what comes across this is the absolute brutal honesty you've got in it, man. That's one of the reasons I'm so impressed with it. But I think maybe you could at this point.
I'm just a person.
I'm we all men. But I think it's probably just worth you mentioning now for those that haven't read it, and they should have done. But if those that haven't read it and need to buy it now, what's it about? So what happened that caused you to do this comic? Yeah.
So
I mean, talk about it as much and as little as you want.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
No, I'm very open to talking about it. I mean, this is what I want to do. This is very important to me because in this age of, homophobic rise and turmoil, it's more and more precious to be honest and expressive about pure ignorance and hatred.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I found. So during my second year at university, the break between second and third year, I spent the summer working for my father in his plaster workshop while my friends were in other art studios across England. And it was kind of a dead-end job, but, I learned a little bit of plaster work and a little bit of history and all this stuff. And this guy came in, and I was only at the job for about 2 weeks, and I've never encountered somebody who was so not mean, but like I want to say evil, but that's no one's truly evil.
This man is an absolute bull of a meat
monster.
Isn't he? Yeah.
Hateful is
hate-filled. Yeah.
This guy came in and he was aggressive at first, and eventually he came back and was very physical. Physical enough that I lost consciousness from being strangled, and the resulting books are about the legal prosecution and coping with it in probably the worst time possible for any student of art, your final year of university.
Right. Which you deal with at the start of the book, don't you? That's you. It's almost, is that right? That what you're dealing with there? Yeah.
In the beginning of the book, we address. I basically address the issues, and in the following books, it will be addressing the aftermath and sort of like an Ouroboros. It wraps around itself, and
it's very much because it's a book about trauma and a traumatic event, obviously,
and I'm guessing PTSD as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And of course, like all these stories, the trauma is one part of an ongoing story, isn't it? Which is, you don't. I mean, certainly, we could say it a million times over, but this book is very powerful, and you get right to it, but in a very honest and it sounds weird to say it, but there's a real poetry to your storytelling and narration,
symbolism,
and the symbolism in it that really sort of like draw you in. What was it that made you? Some of the visuals. Before Wolf came on and we were talking before we started the show, we were just talking about, well, I buy this page. Well, I love this type of
I've got to tell you, Wolf, you better not be doing this fucking digitally, because I'm going to be buying a page.
But there's some wonderful. Yeah, there's some wonderful. Tony's going to cry now.
So print.
But there's some wonderful sort of symbolic pages and stuff.
Yeah.
How was that? Coming up with those things. What was the thought process, and was that in working on a comic, especially something like this? What was it about it that you found to be helpful?
Yeah, there's a lot of storytelling decisions you made there as well, man, as part of that, aren't there?
So my psychologist introduced me to Carl Gustav Jung, who's amazing. He talks about the archetypes of story and people, and he says, life is a story, and people are characters and have different aspects towards them. The shadow, the wise old mentor, all of this stuff, and in reality, I examined the trauma in that lens, and I lent elements of story beats and iconography towards people who, from my perspective, embodied those elements that Carl Jung was talking about.
Okay, so the archetypes of because the psychologist plays a part in it, doesn't it? Almost.
Yes, very important actually.
Yeah, like a bookend storytelling. Yeah.
So when you kind of like, right, I'm going to tell this story, the kind of the function of like, how am I going to do this? Is it just going to be a linear timeline from A to D, whatever? Was the act of trying to like, I've got to tell this horrible event in a narrative, was that tricky to kind of construct?
There are many ways to tell a story. A pure linear narrative is the simplest one. However, I think, trauma itself lends to a fractured narrative quite literally. past and present for those suffering with CPTSD or PTSD is a constant. And I have that. I do.
It's the flashback scenario thing. Is that what you're talking about? Where you fixate on a moment, stuff like that?
Yes, in fact.
I remember the good things. Yeah.
In fact, I listened to the wonderful review you first gave me, and you hit the nail on the head when you said there were certain things or imagery that stuck in my mind. And yes, I pulled them from my subconscious, the ones that remained, and they held symbols. They held so much power in my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, coffee mug, yeah.
Man, the coffee mug page is my favorite page. So,
yes,
but
very powerful.
The way that you use symbolism in this, you use symbolism that relates to the actual story. So people that will find out what the coffee mug means. But it rains coffee mugs near the start of the book. But also you use perhaps more iconographic, icons of previously used symbolism, like water, for example. So water's a big symbolic thing in dreams and stuff, isn't it? And
absolutely,
the drowning and the swimming underwater and the head above the water stuff. Beautiful stuff, man. Beautiful. Yeah.
I can't spoil most of the next books, but again, the head, Tony, you really are good at this. But water plays a major part. I live in a seaside city, so it's always been part of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm also a Pisces, so
right, okay. Interesting. Yeah. And then the fact the policemen are big eyeballs. That's a real thing as well to me.
The new books do play around with sort of perspective and imaginary concepts of, again, the archetypes of people. I think it is okay in autobiography to lend or anthropomorphism or sort of heightened reality to people, because you're not, you could render this perfectly, but you'll miss out on the emotional impact that you as an artist can tell. And that's something I always recommend when I teach. It's don't think about people as people, think about people as moods or powerful forces that pull and push you away. I think visuals can enhance your story, and because we're a visual medium to be and convey emotions, provides context and a sense of your own interpretation.
I think it's comics is its own medium, and you're using it to its best benefit. If you're if you're just telling this linear storyline of two people talking, it may as well just be a stage play.
And there's also an element of when it comes to any kind of story, when you step out of it, people that don't necessarily know the context of the story, they don't know what the comic book is, and there's just say it's a talking head, this versus a talking head book, and someone picks it up in Gosh or wherever they look through it, and they're just flicking through it, and they're just looking through it, just think this is just a book about people talking, put it down. Whereas they pick this up and it is just an absolute smorgasbord of fascinating imagery, and just be like, well, what's going on? What is going on here? And a part of a comic's job, in a sense, is to just capture the reader, to get people reading.
I reread the fight today, and that just took me off. I thought I'll dip in a couple of pages, make sure I know what I'm talking about later. I ended up reading the whole fight, man. Yeah.
Do you know what? It was really hard to edit it down. When I did, I made fractures for my final year project as for my master's degree. Right. And it was over 555 pages in length.
Wow.
The fight scene itself was way longer. And, one of the things about editing that I've found, especially when it comes to autobiography, is you have to be selective and careful with what you want to put in and out.
Yeah.
So I hope I did a good job.
No, man, you did, and I think stylistically as well. You went from a comic on a couple of pages that reminded me a little bit of a black and white Dave McKean thing going on, but the fight is full on fucking Jack Kirby. I mean, the dude looks like he's out of a Jack Kirby comic. He got that much sort of bombastic, just mean spirited strength about him. And you seemingly grow a little bit in as well. I mean, no spoilers. You fucking give back almost as good as you get. I'm going to say. You know what I mean? And it's almost like watching a fight in a superhero comic for a couple of pages there, man. Because you fly through walls and stuff, don't you? So it's like that.
Yeah.
well, that's how it felt.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess that's the point, isn't it? When people read this, they have to say like, what? I mean, when we read comics, our brains are sort of wired in a certain way to the comic medium and that sort of visual language, So people can I'm not exaggeration, maybe a simple word for it, but it can really get to a comic reader's sort of mindset.
It also grabs you. I'm rooting for you through the fight in the same way. Do you know what I mean? It's like that as I watch it.
So I always think comics, they can offer an absolutely unique perspective on life, because everyone's so different, and how they feel or react to a situation is completely their own. And it's amazing that you can take away that from visual information. You weren't there at the fight, but you're feeling these things. And a lot of books, and we did talk a little bit about sanitization of like airbrushing. Don't do that. And I don't know. I think there is a. I don't know. There's some there should be a boldness about it, an intensity towards work that pushes the boundaries.
I mean, I've said it before on Earwolf. It's the one thing I want out of an auto-bio comic is honesty. And I think we had a series of comics where we saw that. For example, Harvey Pekar and Eddie Campbell and people like that. I'm guessing is an influence. I was going to put you in a minute.
Harvey Pekar.
Good man. Yeah.
Like, when I was making Fractures during university, we barely got 45 minutes a week to talk to teachers.
Right.
So I consumed every single piece of, Pekar, Bouchard, David Smalls,
I'm going to say Craig Thompson, maybe?
Craig Thompson, Chester Brown.
Oh, man, we love Chester Brown here. Yeah, he's nuts, isn't he?
I love Chester Brown.
Have you read Paying for It? Oh, my God.
The man is a master.
That's a hell of a book.
Yeah.
And I think, like, those people back then, like the 70s and 80s, were really saying something.
Yeah.
And we sort of lost that for a long time. I don't know why.
I think what's maybe ruined it to me, I think where it's arisen from is the rise of the internet and diary comics, where people are quite happy to put themselves I've said this for donkey's years, talking to their cat on the couch. Well, I want something more honest, something more, And they paint themselves as sort of very sort of moral and
but there's also I think sometimes when you see those things, just to go back to editing and self-editing, people don't know how to do that, especially like when we're talking about a medium that is talking about ourselves, with an auto-bio book. Where do you edit it? Because everything about your life is
relevant to you.
It's relevant to you, and it's important to your life. So, Wolf, to ask you this, I mean, to edit an autobiographical book is probably difficult anyway, but how much more difficult and was it for this book, where everything must seem, where did you learn to sort of cut out pieces, because everything must have seemed so important to it?
Do you have to walk away and come back and go, right, no, sensibly thinking, we don't need that? It's a bit like that sort of thing.
When I was at university before the lockdown, I was very fortunate to go to a lecture by David Pearson. And he is the guy that did the Penguin books, the recent new ones, the ones that, really re-energized the brand.
Right.
And it wasn't even for illustration, it was for graphic design. But because of the University of Plymouth, you could go to any lecture you want to. And I made a real point, because, I was suffering so much and I needed to find myself again, to go to everything I could. And this talk that David Pearson did changed my life. In it, he said the words, "The book is a precious object." And that resonated with me so much, because he talked about how much books can save and help people.
Okay.
And if you can use your own experiences to help others going through maybe similar, or those who are even interested in it, I think it is a duty to do so.
That brings me to what I was going to ask you, man, and this is important. I know you've clearly been through a lot. We've only seen a small part of it, I'm sure, but the in doing this comic, have you helped yourself?
Yes, absolutely.
You have. Okay. How did the process of that going? Because I know there's ways of distract. You know, PTSD treatment involves distraction and processing what you've been through, and you know, there's a lot of elements to it. Where would this sit in that sort of process?
So, I always say that when I drew it my own way, with my own hands, with my own dictation, I cemented the mental ghosts that was in my mind, and I gave them form, and I controlled how they looked and acted. I took back the power that somebody took away from me, and I rendered it in such a way that it can embolden myself to talk about it, because now I control the narrative once more, and I can use that narrative in a beneficial way, not only for my mental sanity, but hopefully for the world at large.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, because we haven't seen the end of the book, is the process side of it, the legal side of it, is that done now?
The entire book has been rendered. We are just in the process of inking and really editing it down so that it basically shines. Yes. Gosh, sorry. That was...
No, I mean the process of the legal process around the attack.
Yes.
That's all done and everything. So you can quite happily talk about. You're not in the middle of it. You're dealing with the aftermath of it, is what I'm trying to say. I suppose
that was one thing. Not only my university were very concerned with. Because, you know, I was making this in their time, but also Collossive Press, and it's all finished, and everything I put out is 100% true.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so I have no qualms about rendering it or talking about it anymore. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a really unimaginably difficult thing to have it brought up at a trial, for example. Do you know what I mean? To have the comic you've made. The disclosure issues and stuff like that around it. But okay, interesting.
There's a few. There's a brilliant book called The Self-Publisher's Handbook by I think Amanda Segwig. I might have got that wrong, but in it does talk about sort of the legality of using real people, and obviously this person who not only attacked me, but to quote himself, is a famous homophobe. Is a real person, and you know, I've changed the names, the likenesses, and in the book, that's basically how you cover yourself. And that's why I always recommend to anybody that is going to be talking about a difficult subject matter, you must protect yourself as best as possible.
Because you never, I mean, fingers crossed this is going to be very successful, and you know, you don't want anything further down the line that stops you becoming a millionaire off this fucking bellend's actions. Do you know what I mean, Wolf? I mean, if you see what I'm saying.
To me, success doesn't matter much about the financial aspect about it. It is more about the principle of I'm doing this for my own sanity.
Okay, of course,
yes.
But in doing so, I mean, off that, and this is a real exercise in therapy in itself, isn't it? Doing an auto-bio book or things like that.
Yes.
Was there a point during this, because it's an unimaginable, like I can't imagine it, like to revisit that? Were there points when you were like, I can't do this, because you're having to revisit that, and comics take a while, as we all know, people. So you've got to be in that mindset for a long time. Were there moments where it's like, I have to stop, or did you take a temporary stopper at any moment?
There is in some of the newer books, I would say, worse things than the actual strangulation.
Oh wow!
In the sense that emotionally, they affected me more. There were times that I had to really think about, am I capable of even talking about this to myself? Let alone rendering it in such a way that I could show it to people. And I would break down. I still do break down when I talk about these things, because they are what made me who I am, and they are the actions of other people sometimes. And to think about the control of your life, and how things affect you, it's incredibly powerful. And Yes. So basically, yeah. Let's go. Sorry, I went into myself a little bit there.
That's right, mate. That's all right. Well, as long as you're okay, tell us if you're not okay to go on, because we can. Yeah. I know it must be difficult, man. I know you want to, and I know it's brilliant to have you on. But if you're not happy about going,
it's absolutely fine. No.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of these things that you have to push through it, and this is where it goes back to that question where you ask, do you have to stop? Yes, you do.
Okay.
You absolutely do have to stop and look after yourself first.
Yeah.
And when you're ready and you feel like you can, do it.
What perspective does that add to the storytelling process? And that's a strange way to put it, but
that's a fantastic question. It's urgency.
Hmm.
I think the rawness of the subject matter itself can really push an artist.
Yeah.
There is a scene in the next book which I drew out a couple of years ago, and it was really hard, and then I redrew even a couple of months ago, and it was worse because now it's going to go to print. There's more expectation behind it. There is pressure, and with that there is that sort of that rawness again. And
have you had any pushback from those partners or family or friends or anything to say, maybe just not, maybe just think, have you had any pushback against it? Or
I had one person recently come up to me and say, do not capitalize upon our relationship.
Come on.
Do not benefit from our interactions. And I respect them, obviously. I do.
Yeah.
And so they have been, even though they're, funny enough, they actually weren't in my book. But there are people, and especially if you're talking about your family, you have to tell them that you're going to be talking about these things. I had my birthday in February, and I told my parents, tearful, like, I'm going to be talking about you and some of the things that you've done.
Yeah.
And I know you tried your best then, but it was inadequate. And I'm sorry, but it's better to be truthful than to lie and say that you were good in one aspect or another.
How were they about that, if you don't mind me asking?
They were receptive, which I was very thankful for.
Yes.
But to deny truth can only hurt everyone involved.
Yeah.
Mate, it's quite the process, man. I'll take my hat off to you around this.
Yeah.
This is what art is, man, to me. This is what it should be. Not only is it helping you, but this is going to help other people. You must have had some responses around that, I'm guessing, as well.
I'm not joking. I've had some of the most encouraging emails from people who are not only going through hate crimes themselves, but disease or abuse or true horrors of the world. And just to get an email saying like they want to do this, or they really empathize with the book, even just the first book. It's an honor to help.
And it's certainly, I mean, it really is, and we won't undersell this. It's a powerful book. It is in terms of is this your official debut? Should we say?
Yes, in the autobiographical comic world. Although we speak about the great Tumblr.
The great Tumblr. We'll get onto the Tumblr career in a second. I mean, to come out of the gate with something like this, there's not many people who even if they want, the way you've delivered this is powerful on many levels. And I think it will inspire people to do similar things, to be brave enough. Autobiographical comics, they are also an exercise in bravery across the board. Yeah. Which is why, as me and Dan say, we couldn't do it because we're cowards. No,
you can tell when people half-arse it, man. It's the thing. There's that lack of realism pings off it immediately. And even I can tell the dialogue is so realistic in this as well, Wolf. That's the thing about it. But one of the things we were talking about the other day was about you're with your family, and whilst one person is ringing the police, the other person is looking them up online. which is so realistic.
Yeah.
And that's what people do now, isn't it? You know.
I mean, again, this is the thing. This is one of the things I always say about people who do autobiography. You have to research, revisit, and stay 100% truthful. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, but that's what people do, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's exactly how it works. You know, these days.
Because if that was someone was writing that scene in a fiction, that those kind of elements, I imagine, wouldn't be present because it's that old truth is stranger than the fiction stuff that people do in crisis situations. Isn't stuff that would make cinematic or a story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, while someone's ringing the police and saying you're badly injured, someone else is looking them up on Facebook. You know, just but it's got that
in the book as well. That page just underlined the point. That whole scene has a figure watching over the entire. I won't spoil what it looks like, but there's a very much a comic book element that you can't get anywhere else. That's why comic books are such a brilliant medium. But there's a certain like someone's watching over, which adds another element to it. That this is it's a personal sort of scene, and yet someone else is there that shouldn't be there. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing.
It's my dark passenger. Honestly.
Yeah. There is honestly one page in this that made me think I need to get a Hellboy commission off you as well, man.
But I mean, if we can just sort of switch to style and other comic books, because your visual style is, so wonderfully sort of represented in this book, which is what gives the book its weight. I mean, you've named some of them already, but what are some of your artistic influences and like storytelling influences?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked.
That's the thing. Artists love this question. They do. That's it.
I always come prepared with notes. I can't. I was so nervous about talking to you guys because I don't know how people react or how I should react around people. But I knew you wanted to talk about influences. All right, so here we go. The late great Tim Sale.
Nice. Yeah.
Probably the reason why I got into comics was Batman: The Long Halloween.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I got that. That was one of my first oh my god, comics are the best medium ever. But yeah, Tim Sale, Richard Corbin.
Wow. Okay, I can see a bit of that actually. Now you say it, I can see some Corbin grotesquerie in some of these pages. Yeah. Interesting.
But my sort of influences spread a little bit further into like cinema. So I'm very influenced by like the work of Stanley Kubrick, David Lynch, but specifically Satoshi Kon, who produced and created Perfect Blue.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
His work especially influenced Fractures Beyond a Shadow of a Doubt. His way of sort of seeing the world in dreams and reflections of the mental state was paramount to basically me even being able to talk about this sort of stuff.
Yeah, because also like especially when you're dealing with symbolism or dreamlike states or any kind of like or metaphorical imagery, etc. You don't want it to be at the expense of you don't want people to sort of read or watch something and then go, what is this? What is it? I don't know what this means. Like there's the link, isn't there? There has to be, and I think that's why we all responded to this book so much, is because the visual links are all there, aren't they? The water, the sea, the mud, everything's just there, but it's still connected, rather than being. Some artists may go over the top in a sort of artistic exercise just for themselves, that the actual narrative loses itself.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and the connection is the most important point.
Yeah.
To simply put something onto the page and expect somebody to interpret it is, I think, a folly. You're not actually putting any physical or mental thought into the production. I could have rendered the fight scene in 100 different ways. I could have not include the water or the coffee mug or the broken imagery, but it all has a place. The breaking literally happened in the fight. That's why when I was strangled, sorry, spoilers in the book, the literal structure breaks because that was happening. My larynx was being stressed,
crushed,
broken. and my head was bashed, and my eye was bloodshot and blood, and I get also another influence would be Francis Bacon.
Okay.
Violence itself, to really touch upon it, you have to embrace it and understand the physicalness of meat and
I love the way that Bacon also says that art is only an interpretation of one other thing, so he's saying like anger or a street, it's just it's reworking of one other thing. And I think what you've got there as well, you've got the villain in this is the epitome of bullish fucking meat-headed anger and homophobia, and he's almost an archetype in himself,
spite,
isn't
it? Yeah, it's absolutely like unbridled spite and nastiness.
Yeah, a real person nonetheless.
They're out there, man. They're out there. I tell you now.
But in terms of like your process, obviously, as we found out, you teach autobiographical books as well. You mentor people. Is that the case?
Yes, I have worked for many institutions here and there, helping people process their own traumas in the visual medium.
And you're working for the local university at the moment, is that right? Partly.
I've mentored for them for a little bit. I've been a visiting specialist, but I've mostly been doing like online teaching. At the moment, I did a little bit for Safe Space for Hard Stories, which is a subsidiary of LDC Comics. I also do I also do my own sort of teaching on the sidelines with students who are making their own work, which I am so proud of. I really stress I'm so proud of them.
Is there a little bit of therapist in you there as well, man, do you think? It's definitely art therapy, isn't it?
That was one of the things I researched in my master's degree was art therapy.
Right.
It was all part and parcel with sort of our autobiography. I researched methods and the structure of how you might communicate with yourself in the visual medium.
Okay.
How has that sort of process been? With the moving to doing something very personal for yourself to then talk through with other people about their own very personal things.
You have to be open, extremely open to other people's love stories themselves. It's one thing that I'm very fortunate, and I will not go into detail here because I do.
It's fine.
But I won't say that it takes a toll on you, but there is a greater understanding that you learn. You do become a therapist in the sense that you take on other people's mental, not burdens, I would say, but sort of stresses, and understand perhaps why they might do certain actions or think a certain way. But it is okay, because with art and with the time that we have together, we are able to really bring ourselves both upwards. It's really I'm so thankful for these people, because I learned so much from speaking to them that sorry, I might plug my next book after this, because
that's all right.
My next book is literally called Other People's Stories.
Okay.
I've literally been so amazed. I've not accumulated, but like sort of, I was fortunate to be interviewing these people, and those who do not want to make their own book have worked with me in maybe this next book that's coming out there. It's still in the air, but yes.
Well, that's something I've done a similar project. Well, we all three of us have worked on it together. Actually, I've just sent it to you on a Dropbox link on Instagram. Actually, dude, where we took snapshots of people's stories as told to me and made short 3-page comics on them. Amazing. In order to just signify that little moment of someone's life. Frame that little moment, and they're quite powerful when you get them like that.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because every life has something to teach us, and to say that no one has a story is 100% false. Everyone has a story to tell, even if it is unremarkable to the person themselves. And that's something that I find is very interesting about autobiographical comics and people who think they cannot tell autobiography, because and it is that sort. I've experienced this blockage, this sort of not an underappreciation, but sort of what's the word? You think it's common. You think you shouldn't say it because it's everyone's experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
When in actuality, it's so unique. It's so powerful.
Do you think people are afraid of maybe, I don't know where to put it now, maybe oversharing or being self-indulgent to a certain extent? Do you think there's a bit of that somehow? Sometimes they might take a step back and not tell these stories.
I really wish they wouldn't. I think everyone should say what they need to say.
Yeah. Okay.
I do always get the thing of like, who wants to hear from me? Do you know what I mean? Like, why? What makes me special? But like you said, everyone's got a story to tell, and you're the only person that can effectively tell that story.
Exactly. The best source is the original source. Yeah, I think everyone should tell the stories. It's not only empowering for the person that is telling the story, but it can help society at large. There was a fantastic book that I picked up when I was at university called The Social Design Reader, and it talked about sort of being an ethical creator in this modern age. And it is the social designer's responsibility to not only take in consideration their methods of communication, but how they communicate.
Right.
And if you can, please do.
So if someone approached you and said, I'm interested, Wolf, in like, I want to do a biographical comic about a moment in my life or a period of time in my life, how do you go about coaching them? What would the first steps be in directing them into doing what they want to do?
Well, here is 7 things to consider.
Hey, here we go.
All right. Number 1, focus on your unique perspective. Every life is different.
Yeah.
And your own thoughts and emotions, for a lack of a better term, are valid.
Yeah.
But they are, absolutely. Secondly, it's to consider a strong narrative structure. Now, you can tell a story in many different ways. You can tell it clearly, linearly, or you could break it up. You could tell it in different perspectives. You could even tell a story from another person's perspective if you feel inclined to, if they were present.
I was going to ask you about that. So now that you mention that, I mean, a lot of people in auto-biocomics almost use like a cipher, don't they, for themselves? They like rename the person, or I was rereading Bob Fingerman's Minimum Wage the other day, and he calls himself something else, but it's all about him. That's got to be valid as well. I'm guessing to you.
Absolutely. Just because someone's changing a name in the book doesn't mean it's not impactful or useful for the person. Also, some people do feel the need to distance themselves from the actual events that happened. A name or a pseudonym is a complete good reason to do so. Shall I continue with the 7 points?
Yeah, go please.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 is to use your own visual language to enhance your story. And it goes back to what we were talking about, finding links and imagery and symbolism that means something to you, considering how that can improve your artwork, provide context, and enhance the pace or sense of place. Really is the dressing towards the meaning behind your work. This goes on to the 4th point, which is to experiment with different styles. Traditional sequential arts can offer basically an infinite amount of ways to render the process of time itself. And the best way to tell your story is however you think is the best way to tell your story. Flipping between genres is okay. And that's one thing I always do stress. You don't have to be an amazing artist to tell a story. One of my favorite books is Lighter Than My Shadow by Katie Green, and in that book she deals with her anorexia and quite a nasty thing that happened to her with I guess if you say a therapist. And Katie, she wasn't a traditional artist in the sense, and her work is, it's not stick figures, but it isn't, I don't know, like it isn't
photorealistic,
or
It's not Neil Adams.
It's not Neil Adams.
Yeah.
But
would you recommend switching up styles within a single comic? Well, you clearly do because you've done it. But is that something you recommend to students and stuff? Is it?
If it's
to
the
get
best
stuff
way,
across.
if it's the best way you can tell a story, or it's the way that you think is the most pertinent, absolutely.
Yeah. Good.
Homogeny is laziness sometimes. I think to limit yourself to a style can really be a death sentence of the creative process. Sorry, that's a bit dark, but yes.
That's right, man. That's all right.
Let's go for 5. Edit and revise. Like any creative project, editing and revising are essential to making your comic book better. Take time to review your work and make edits that are needed to ensure your story is clear. And that's
at which point did you include the Collossive Massive in this? Did it? I mean, were they part and parcel of the editing, or was that something you did yourself?
Collossive have been very kind and allowed me to be the main editor of this.
Okay.
They've only been really helpful when it comes to wording. I'm dyslexic, so
right.
I'm very bad at typing words. So they've been proofreading all my things and helping me come up with a more, I guess you could say, readable versions of events. Like
cool. Yeah, I get
how naturalistic the words might be. They've helped me translate that a bit further.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
I guess 5 and 6 would be 6 and 7 would be basically to remember that autobiographical comics are deeply personal and an emotional process. It is important to take care of yourself and to ensure to celebrate your successes along the way, because you don't have to put this out into the world. You don't have to show this to anybody. You could just reclaim that event for yourself and keep it to yourself, and that's absolutely fine.
I mean, that must have been a big decision for you to go, well, Collossive are interested, this is now going to be sold, which is a different dynamic to doing it just to help yourself, and like you say, put it in a drawer, isn't it? It's almost like a next step in, take a deep breath, this is now going in the shops. It's a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's certainly an experience. It can be bad and good. It's a responsibility upon the artist if you're going to do it. And I will stress this. Like I thought maybe I could be a reclusive artist and just put this book out and that be done with it. But there are people who approach you and say like they really resonated with it, or they see themselves or see something in it, and you respond to it. You always do, and if you can respond to it and you want to, you can. You should if you feel like it.
And also, Collossive have put themselves behind it, and you want it to sell for them. I'm guessing, not necessarily, like you say, not necessarily for you, but it'd be nice for them. Do you know what I mean? They put out, your book, which is incredible. It's nice, I think,
I'm so thankful for Collossive because no joke of a lie, I approached numerous publishers who were scared of the book.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
So scared that they said it would never be published, some of them.
Oh, right.
And
well, joke's on them.
It really is. I had a response once which was said, the story's good, the artwork's mediocre, but it's too dangerous to be published. Which, as an artist, just made me more infuriated.
I would put that as a pull quote on it, mate. I'll tell you now. That would be on the poster for mine, if someone said that to me.
Too dangerous to be published.
Yeah.
I honestly think intensity is lost, and a lot of it's watered down to be safe in the margins of money.
We talk about that a lot, man. Yep.
There's a fantastic essay by Zora Neale Hurst, I believe, called "What White Publishers Won't Publish" back in the 1950s, and it all comes down to money. It all comes down to scared publishers not being able to really approach work that might be challenging, or say something that is against the grain. And nothing that I have to say is against the grain. I think it's important for I guess, the comic book world, but maybe society and people in general, to really understand and see these things that should be gone, homophobia, ignorance, sexism, transphobia, all this stuff. It's amazing that it's still here.
Yeah.
It's 2023. We should be better than this.
Also, when we spoke to Mark Miller, he said, I don't know if this is on mic or not, Dan, he said the most interesting stuff comes from the underground and the indie. That's where the next revolution is coming from in relation to literature and comics. And,
I can't remember if he said that on the pod or not, but he definitely mentioned that to us. That
you were saying, right, boys, what's happening in your world? Because he was really genuinely interested in this is the next cycle. This is where the people are coming from. And we've got to be prepared. The great revolutions in culture have come from periods where people took chances, everything from the 60s to punk onwards, and we've got to be able to do that.
Yes, or else we lose not only ourselves to fear and ignorance, but sort of the status quo. And
we lose ourselves to banality, Wolf, I think, just the same old crap, coming out.
And that's really why it was so important, to take that step forward. And if people feel like, here's an example. Okay, so this is part of the reason why I did the maths. This is why I decided to do fractures, actually. So for my master's degree, I had to prove why I want to spend a year doing a project. And so I knew I wanted to talk about what happened to me, but I needed to research if there was a hole in the collective culture that could be not only filled up, but was needed to be talked about. So I went to the Queer Zine Library. They were doing an exhibition in Bristol at the time, and I asked them, do you have any works that talk about hate crime? And these were zines that were collected from the early 50s all the way up to present. And the person that was running it said basically to me, they don't know. And that struck me as incredibly not bizarre, but interesting, because hate crime has been around for, how long has ignorance been around? How long has pure hatred been a thing? And yet there is little media, especially in the comic book world, that reflects it. And so I saw that if there wasn't that there already, it was a duty to put work that could speak for it, not completely for it. I think, if somebody wants to do a book about their own hate crime, they should and absolutely must. I'm just a part of that revolution you're speaking of, in the sense that there are holes in media culture that people with the right tools should enable and should be present to tell and educate in some sense.
Absolutely. And I think like with media, and this has always been the case anyway, but like they don't like things that supposedly make people uncomfortable, but the whole part of learning is not to be comfortable. You don't learn anything being comfortable.
You got a challenge,
because if it's not comfortable, you already know it. Do you know what I mean? It's so work like this is important. We need more stuff like this, and and certainly we want to see more things like this on this show, and we and once again, there's more issues of this coming out, of course, as well.
Yeah, it's only issue 1. 1 of 4, is it? 1 of 4, Wolf? Is that right?
Yes.
So when what's the sort of current schedule of the future for Fractures?
I'm having a meeting with them, my press, tomorrow, and we hope to get the book out. And that's maybe 2 and 3 out this year.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
that's
wow.
good.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And they hopefully will be special because I'm making badges, and there are
Everyone loves a badge, mate.
a badge. But there also might be other things with them. We'll have to see. I'm very. I think comics themselves can be more than just the book itself, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
They can be sort of they could be symbols in themselves, and to ignite sort of connection, you can elaborate upon pre-existing media. Yeah, that's a
totally.
bit vague,
Okay.
but I have to be vague right now, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
where can people get the book currently?
Oh, gosh, do you know what? I've just found out that it's in another shop in Manchester, and I'm so thankful. But at the moment, it is obviously provided through the Collossive Press website. It's on my website. It's also in I believe Gosh Comics.
Yeah, we checked yesterday. There's still copies. Yeah.
Good. Gosh Comics. Gaze the Word, which is the first queer bookshop I ever went into.
I was in the shop just down there. That's in just off Judd Street there, isn't it? It's down that way, out off the back of Russell Square, I think, that way, isn't it?
I would like to do a little shout out to the old Curiosity shop in Plymouth. Because no joke, it's probably the highlight of my career to have the book available 10 minutes walk from where I nearly died. So, to have it a couple of years later available on the shelf to help somebody going through it, I have to thank them for making my dream a reality of taking that terrible event and turning it into something that could help somebody else. And so the old Curiosity shop in Plymouth.
Is it in Jam as well?
Yes. Yes, Jam Bookshop, amazing, lovely. I love that place. God, there's I think Nash Comics in Ashburton.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I think online and around there, we're really just starting to get it out there. Collossive and me, we're just like 5 people.
Yeah.
But
it's good though, man. It's good.
Yeah.
The response from it has been truly outstanding. I didn't really expect all this.
Yes.
Well, it's good news, man. We've got
we've
got a few from the Slack as well. I thought we might, while you're still with us, Wolf, I thought we might mention some of the books that people have mentioned. We have a Slack and there's a sort of podcast discussion element in it. So sure. I thought I'd just mention the ones if what we thought of them. So I recommended Minimum Wage by Fingerman. Have you read that, Wolf? One of yours?
Not yet.
Yeah, have a look at that one. That's good. Simon Russell said Eddie Campbell's Alec. I know Simon and I did a podcast talking about that. That's the brilliant series. Again, very honest again. And then he says, but for a single OGN, I'd say Coma by Zara Slattery.
Yes.
Hits me every time. Big story for everyday people, beautifully drawn and avoiding all the misery memoir tropes that drag a lot of modern auto comics down. I haven't read that either, actually. I must get a copy of that.
It's very good.
Cool. Cole Henley has mentioned Alison Betchell's Fun Home. Fun Home, isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
It's so influential, actually.
Oh, okay, cool.
Amazing.
Cool. Nick Bryan has said Spinning by Tilly Walden. I'd like to point out we were the first podcast to ever interview her.
Wow, that's amazing.
Even though I did,
it was 5 minutes of
jokes.
Yeah, it was 5 minutes of him making Blades of Glory jokes. I don't know where that's
still counts.
Yes, thank you. Jordan Thomas says Box Office Poison for me, although I was also a big fan of Zoe Thorogood's. Also been on the show. It's Lonely at the Centre of the Earth, which is getting a lot of heat at the moment.
Yep.
And I think that's it. Maybe interesting to compare the more and Julie Chester Brown, Joe Matt Chester Brown, and Julie Doucette mentioned by your editor Tom on the Slack.
Oh yes.
Oh, and Jonathan Sapp said to give a small press shout out for Fraser Geeson's The Cleaner, Man of Destiny, which is also a really funny read, really great read. That one as well. There you go. Good stuff.
Fantastic.
And before we let you go, Wolf, what are you currently reading at the moment?
Oh gosh, what am I reading? So I have currently a little zine by where is it? Oh.
I can hear him going to his shelves. You can hear that.
I am.
Yeah.
He's walking to the west wing of his house.
There was a gosh. Oh, where is it? Oh no. Oh. All right. Isaac the Pirate by Christoph Lane.
Okay.
Amazing book.
I've not heard of that. Cool.
It's so beautifully rendered. Oh my god, I love the European comics. What else am I reading? Horny and High by Ed Firth is fantastic. The second volume just got released.
Yes. I'm friends with the guy in France who distributes it through crowdfunding. Yeah, and I got to see a copy when I was on the table. Yeah. That's some interesting stuff, man.
Fantastic.
Oh, gosh, I hope I didn't put my foot on that.
No, not at all.
Totally not. No,
not at all, no, man. Not at all. Cool. Did we get your website, by the way, yet? Did we get that yet?
One moment. I think it's. Do I even know my own website? Yes, I do. It's a Wolfgang Crowe, all one word. .co.uk.
Yeah, and that is Crowe with an E.
Yes.
There you go. So
that's a fucking great name you got as well, man.
Yeah,
that's a fucking great name.
Thank you. I was born with it. It was very. Thank you.
maybe he was born with it.
Yeah.
But awesome name aside, you're creating awesome comics as well. Oh, see what I did there? There's a pun.
Well done.
But yes, no, go forth and check out this work, and loads more to come from Wolf. And be sure to tell us what you've got coming up, Wolf, and we'll shout about it on the show.
Always,
definitely.
Thank you so much.
And there you have it, folks. Thanks again to Wolf for joining us on the show. We will, of course, be putting out the relevant numbers. If anything we talked about resonated with you, stay tuned for the end of the show, because we will once again be putting out those numbers. And the
and that's great. He was great. I've got to tell you
that. Dude, yeah.
Talking in that depth about it. Good on him, man.
Yes. Yeah. And I know we mentioned it many times, and Tony obviously recommended it on the show, but really do pick up Fractures.
Yeah, you guys saw it this week, didn't you? I was glad you liked it as much as me. Yeah.
And we both had, me and Dan both had a visceral reaction to it. It was a real sort of, whoa. Do you know what I mean? Obviously powerful stuff. And
I'm
also
going to read it through again now after we've had this interview, because I'm thinking it would be even different now after reading it. From speaking to Wolf.
Yeah. And subject matter aside, just a brilliant creative force.
Yes.
So, and such a shame that the pages are digital, Tony.
I know. Can you believe it? Yeah. And thanks to Collossive Press for sending over copies and arranging the interview. That's very kind of them.
Yeah. Speaking of shout-outs, what shout-outs do we have this week, gents?
I've just got the one. So big congratulations to Jordan Thomas, slacker and regular member of our community, for their image deal with Shaky Kane. How cool is that?
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Yeah, nice to see. Good to see when your friends do well, man. That's great. That's the only one I got this week. Got that one.
Dan, what have you got?
I've got two. I'm sure you can guess at one of mine.
Is it Lawless?
Lawless, yes. Lawless Comic Con, 28th and 29th of May, 2022, at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotel.
You put some real vinegar on that one, Dan.
Yeah, how much they paying you?
Well, if you take part in the raffle, you can win yourself a copy of Viper Crimson Dawn as one of the prizes. So it's all to play for if you've not already bought it already. Which
get on board.
You should have done really. Which you can go to DZ publishing.com, get yourself a copy.
Shameless. Absolutely shameless.
And also Mahoneys issue 6, the series finale, the final issue of the series about a bar for supervillains in the epic finale of the Last Stand storyline, smashed through its target. You got 3 days left to pledge on that. I recommend doing so. But you can also pick up all the previous Mahoneys books as add-ons and bits and pieces of different levels. So go check that one out.
Nice. I just got a quick shout out. There's a Kickstarter coming up from Bigfoot Studio at Ink Funnel on Twitter.
They contacted us today, didn't they?
Yeah, this is the Wicker Pasty from Tristan Mitchell, who's a brilliant artist based in Cornwall, UK. And the Wicker Pasty riffs playfully on folk horror and cultural identity with a side order of Lovecraft and ritual baking. Inspired by the dark, whimsical storytelling familiar to audiences of Footsbarn, Bedlam, and Knee-High Theatre. We'll probably put another shout out on the show, but Tristan does wonderful work, and this looks really great. You know, if you check out on my Twitter account, you can see the reply. It's got a great cover.
I retweeted it on the Awesome Pod account as well, so it's on there as well.
Yeah. So look forward to that. That comes in, and we'll probably badger him to get some review copies. Shameless. Anyway,
good.
Right. With that in mind, shall we recommend some stuff to people?
Yeah, I got the two again, guys. Shall I bookend?
Yeah.
Sure.
You start us off.
My first one is All Eight Eyes. It's another monster. I read a couple of monster books this week, actually. Funny enough, after last week's one. So Kaiju one. So this is written by Steve Fox, art by Peter Kowalski, colours by Brad Simpson, letters by Hassan Otsami Elahu covers by Kowalski and Simpson, and there's a James Sokyo variant which I didn't get my hands on, but that looks great. 30 pages at Dark Horse.
What did you say the name of this was?
All Eight Eyes. Unsurprisingly, all about spiders. So the story.
Trigger warning for anyone listening.
Trigger warning for Vin is a bit of a useless twat.
I steady on, man.
Yeah, no, I don't call you Vin.
Okay.
You're the Vista. He can't get back into his flat as he hasn't paid his rent. So he goes for a nighttime walk in New York City, and he sees this dude with a hoodie and a dog, and it looks like from a distance that he's beating a man to death with a hammer. So he sort of shouts, and as he gets closer, he realizes he's not beating a man to death. There's a man dead on the floor, and he's beating a massive 3 times the size of a dog spider to death with the hammer. And something happens and he goes unconscious, and he wakes up later. Vin wakes up and he's in this hideout with the dog and this guy in the hoodie, and he sort of begins to learn about what is happening, and he's actually quite in over his head, and we get an insight into what's really happening. And there wasn't just one spider, obviously there's a mass of them, and there's something happening with them, and he has to decide whether he's going to help this dude or not and get involved or not. And that's kind of the first issue, really. There's no real revelations in this comic. It's just a fun monster book, with people fighting massive fucking spiders with hammers. That'll do for me. It's not remarkable or original, but it's just fun. So I think sometimes we just need that, don't we? Mostly because of Kowalski's really solid art, lovely line work. He does some good things. He does the interaction between the two men characters in this. He does that well, but he also does the sort of massive spider attacks and stuff like that. That works really well. Everyone's pretty well realized, although there's only a couple of main characters in it, pretty well realized. And I'm going to say, I'd be lying if I said I think this would probably work better in a trade, because it's very much a setup issue. But it worked for me. It was a fun digital read that I had a read of. When you sort of surfing the new books, you think, I'll just give it a go. You find an issue one, don't you, and you think you'll give it a go. And it's a fun, schlocky adventure story with a bit of sort of horror overtone. So I thought I'd give it a go. There's a couple of bubble placements, word balloon placements. I'm going to say didn't quite work. If you've got an issue in front of you, go to page 21, and it feels like there's an out of order thing going on there. I'm not really sure what that is. And the cover, if you guys call it up while we're chatting, All Eight Eyes, issue 1, it's a little bit underwhelming. It's sort of, they try to sort of do the sort of shadow of a spider over someone running down an alleyway. I don't know why they just didn't put the fucking spider on it. Do you know what I mean? It's in the first issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just go for it. It's only going to sell itself once. You got to go for it sometimes. I think that would have been a bit better. But yeah, it's good solid comicking out of Dark Horse. Another monster book. Seems to be in fashion at the moment. Seems to be quite a few monster books. There's another one out of Scout this week about a massive shark, which I really liked. And the new Leo book, which I sent you the images of last week, didn't I? Of the massive head coming out of the water. That's another one at the moment as well. So there's quite a lot of that going on. But yeah, so that's my first one. It's All Eight Eyes.
I just did a quick Google search of that to see the cover. I totally agree with you about the issue 1 sort of cover.
Yeah.
There is a sort of, there's another cover I see here that's from Previous World that seems like the spiders are crawling out from an alleyway.
Is that the Sokyo maybe one?
Yeah, I think that's the Sokyo one. And there's
right.
an issue 2. Yeah, so that immediately, that does exactly what you wanted, Tony, that Sokyo
yeah,
one.
Yeah.
And the issue 2, like in this Google search, I think there's a Henderson. Is that Mike Henderson?
Okay, yeah, rings a bell, yeah.
But the issue 2 cover is horrific. Absolutely fucking horrific, and that's why.
Oh, okay.
It's a brilliant. Can you see it on a Google?
Is that one with the
I haven't
spiders?
seen it yet. No.
The spiders crawling over a face, which is not all there.
That's what you want, baby. That's what you want. Yeah.
That is fucking. In the vein of like those old movies like Slugs.
Yeah.
And Ticks and things like that. Do you know what I mean? It's that fucking.
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Awesome.
The Rats or something.
Yeah.
That's what you want. You're gonna. These books sometimes don't make it to the end of their run. We need to just. You want to fucking go out the gate strong.
Come out
giant
punching
spider
straight
on the cover,
away,
mate.
like,
I've got to tell you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
good stuff.
dear.
I think otherwise, pleasant read. Enjoyed it.
Great.
But there you go.
Great.
Yeah.
I might check that out. Dan, what have you got?
I've got a comic called Sokyo X by Corey Tran.
Oh yeah.
If you go to planetlandcomics.com, so that's planetlandcomics.com, you can read this for free, as well as buy the print edition, as well as another comic called New Challenger, which looks like a wrestling comic, but I've not had a chance to check that one out. This, I've had this in my, I've got a little folder on my desktop, Google Chrome of like web comics I'm going to read. I was like, I'm going to go to a web comic this week, and this one was at the top of the list to read. This is fucking great. It's just absolute kinetic action, like all the way through, right until the end when you get some story and narrative coming in. But essentially, this one character called Senshiro, along with his partner Tori, who's in comms with him, he begins like an assault on this an enemy structure, basically, and throughout he's just moving, running, shooting, sliding. It's so good. I was just like page after page, bang, 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 flying through it, and he's sort of in and out of communication with his teammate as she sort of like tries to direct him to where he needs to be. It's very much got sort of manga stylings, but there's the faces have got a lot more of they're not like typical manga faces. There's a lot more character and features in them. But
it feels a little bit like manga crossed with your style, mate. I'll be honest. A bit of that somewhere.
I can see that. I can see a bit of that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it maybe while it appeals to so much to me, it's just I really love what Corey's doing here. It's fantastic stuff. I want to read more. So yeah, you can kind of like blast through it reading it, and at the end, there's more of a detailed breakdown as the characters get back to their headquarters and start having a kind of the narrative starts building up in the characters, and there's a lot of interpersonal relationship and drama that Corey's like bringing to the fore, and he's thinking, right, where's this all going to go? But for an opening comic, this is a real strong statement. I was very impressed, and I'd urge you to go and check it out at planetlandcomics.com, and you can read the entire comic for free via the website, and you can buy print editions of it as well. So nice, lovely stuff. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Nice. Okay, my one this week is another little bit of a digital purchase. I'm trying. I really am trying to just go to those digital shelves, and normally I'm like, why are you recommending this? This is nonsense. And trying to find something that would appeal to me, and I certainly did this week. I think partly still chasing that dragon from Jason McNamara's Past Tense, that sort of like cool sci-fi crime vibe that I've got going on. I was immediately, and loving a sort of play on words for a comic book title, I picked up a book from Boom Studios and Boom Comics called Know Your Station. I thought this was a brand new book, but it seems like it's all come out by now. So,
all right, I've not seen this.
Yeah, okay. This is written by Sarah Gailey, illustrated by Liana Kangas, coloured by Rebecca Nalty, lettered by Cardinal Ray. Apologies if I murdered any of those names. And basically, this is the synopsis is: the wealthiest people in the solar system abandoned the Earth for a private sanctuary in space, leaving the rest of us to die amidst cataclysmic climate change. But the 1% won't be safe for long. A murderer is on the loose, specifically targeting the super rich. Soon, Elise, an employee of the billionaire's space station, is wrapped up in a deadly investigation, with each issue featuring a new, diabolically different kill. This is exactly what it says on the tin. This is a murder mystery set in basically like it reminds, you know, those classic sort of mid-late 70s, early 80s, you know, the sci-fi, you know, the sort of space stations when there was something saying a little bit about society in itself as well. It is totally this space station, which is, it says on the first page, the first resort. I mean, I loved it from page one. Spoilers, I really, really like this book. And I got to show you guys this first page actually at some point, because you can see the ship, which basically looks like there's a little bit of a skyscraper. It's a very simplistic kind of design to it. But the wording about the ship is constantly, it's like a sort of a marketing team are writing about the ship and then scratching it out. So it says a refuge for those fleeing climate collapse, scratches out. A state-of-the-art refuge, and then they've scratched out for people who want a better future. And it just keeps going on and on and on until it just sort of says a hub for the future. And they've pretty much eliminated all of the words. So that immediately sets up, right, okay, what's the thinking for this? It has a really novel introduction into the world, because as you know, with these sort of sci-fi stories, you know, these dystopian or kind of, you've got to build the state of the world we're in, haven't you? Like a, you know, like a Soylent Green, you know, you've got to sort of say, here's the sci-fi world that we're in. And it does it in a really novel way that I just thought, that's just a really good way to immediately get someone on board with where we are with the story, because the first few panels it's talking to the reader like they've just got a job at this place. Right. So it says, welcome to the first resort. Today begins your journey into the best future Earth's wealthiest innovation leaders could imagine. You've been selected from a planet-wide applicant pool to serve as staff on the first resort. Congratulations on your new role in the industry's workforce. Technical staff members serve and support CTO Amanda Slotnick. So it's also, and then it sort of says science staff members serve to such and such. It's naming certain characters, and at the end of every panel it says, for technical staff orientation, select here. So it's got that almost an interactive sort of panel to it, like you're looking at the screen. It's telling you, okay, this is part of it, this is part of it. And then after the first page, it says, you've selected general staff orientation. General staff are the backbone and beating heart of the first resort. And then you learn about the way that this station and the people that work there, the hierarchy is already then inbuilt. So I knew exactly kind of what I was in for when it started. But then it cuts to the main character, Elise, who's just really likeable immediately. The first time you meet her, she's kind of, she looks hungover, and she's got a head over a toilet bowl, like sort of throwing up. So like it's kind of a hangover from hell. But also, this is a world where they use these synthetic drugs called blue, but they've also got like sober gum. So if you want to sober up quickly, you just chew this gum, and immediately it sobers you up. Yeah, and it's sober gum, and it's got quitting time written on the packet. And I thought, just these great sort of, you know, high future concepts that are also, they seem like something that could be done. It doesn't seem too crazy. And she's the main character, but she is also she has like an AI going around with her, this station's sort of AI, which is called St. Bridget or Bridget. So she, you know, it's almost like she's constantly talking to it. So it's almost they're sort of a partners, you know. And we're picking it up just after the day before, she has discovered there's a crime scene that's happened. So we're already in it, which is another thing I like. There's some crime stories, it's like slow build. All right, last page is the reveal. Okay.
Yeah, murder in an alley.
Yeah, all right, okay, right. But in this one, it's about 10, 12 pages in, and you see the crime scene. And it was like, oh shit! Like there is a guy he had his skin peeled basically, and he's just been hung up on display. But when I say that, it makes it seem like there's blood and gore everywhere. It is graphic, and this is obviously for mature audiences. But the art is handled in such a way, and it's coloured really nicely as well, that it has a, I don't know, it's just a really good way of presenting it. And when, like I mentioned that crime scene, she meets like an actual proper police officer who's been brought to the station, because the main character isn't a detective. They're just there to sort of liaise with them. They meet this policeman, and they take him to the crime scene, and the crime scene has been completely wiped clean because the victim's wife didn't want anyone to see them like that. So it's like, oh, great, you've ruined an entire, you know, we can't get anything from this. But the AI can do a holographic projection of what it looked like because it recorded it. So you have this brilliant, it's like a horrific image, but it's done in sort of neon, like a magentas, like a hologram projection.
Right.
It's really, really well done. There's a, as with all, I mean, the way I describe it, there's a lot of darkness going on, but there's a wonderful sort of sense of humour going through this as well, that immediately sort of endears you to certain characters. There's there's one moment that sort of made me chuckle out loud, is when Elise is waiting for the policeman to arrive, and she's constantly talking to the AI. And the AI is just trying to, even though Elise is like, oh, fuck my life, she's that kind of person, like, oh, this is a shit day. The AI is going, oh, it's going to be better, don't worry, always trying to sort of bolster them. And the AI is like, it's going to be great. Let's aim lower. It's going to be fine. Lower. Your life is finite, and eventually you will die. Perfect.
You need a little lift sometimes.
Yeah. So there's a real there's a sharp wit to it. I was pleasantly surprised by this. There's a twist at the end. Maybe it's not the only death you find in the first issue, which immediately made me think, okay, this book could be going up a level than your traditional sort of sci-fi crime books. And by the end of it, the main character is kind of, they're both put in a position of, okay, I have to investigate this now, and also, oh my god, what the fuck am I going to do? It's by the end of it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to buy all the other issues, aren't I? Because it's not available. It seems digitally, it's not available as a collection yet. If it was print, I would have ordered it right there and then.
There's a mini, is it?
I did see there's a paperback on Prime.
Okay.
But saying that, yeah, it's a mini series. There's 5 issues. I have bought, because the price went down a little on some of the other issues. I've got up to issue I think it's 3 or 4 I got, because I'm thinking, okay, let's see where the story goes. And I like the fact that they've said from the beginning, each issue featuring a fucked up murder. Do you know what I mean? Their sort of the statement of intent's there. Like, you've got a sci-fi crime murder mystery set on this, space station for the 1%, the top 1%, which is already fascinating enough. What you can do narratively, socially. Do you know what I mean? With those sort of story structures are interesting anyway. But this one has a real sort of wit and sense of humour, and I was just immediately, this is really cool. And also, Know Your Station is just a great title for that.
Yeah.
Considering the societal sort of layers it's got on the story. So yeah, I would highly recommend this. Top work by the creators, who I think Gailey is an author, like a prose author, I think, who's done work before. I don't know if they're going to do any more comic work, but I'm going to read the rest of this and hopefully come back and sort of say, loved it, get it. But yeah, that's mine. Know Your Station, the series from Boom. Okay, Tony.
Speaking of fucked up murders,
here we go. Here
we go.
Buckle up.
This is called A Tale of Terror, Issue 1. Fuck My Son by Johnny Ryan. Published by Mansion Press. Oversized cardstock cover. 9.5 inches by 12.2 inches for the those
it's
interested.
A big one.
Yeah, always a big one. 44 pages, £15 in Gosh. Not cheap.
No.
I'm going to say massively overpriced.
Yeah.
35 euros from the Mansion House Press if you want to sketch with it too.
Yeah. The big spoilers here, and buckle up, people, because the clue is in the name of the author, Johnny Ryan.
Whose last comic I read was called Fucky Pages. There you go.
Yes.
I read the last half of this. I wish I'd read it all in one sitting.
We sat in a pub looking at it.
I was absolutely incredulous. I couldn't stop reading it.
Mansion Press seemed to be his go-to publisher at the moment. For those that don't know, Mansion Press is a French publisher who puts out English language and I think French language as well. They've also put out books I previously talked about, including the comic book Holocaust and Johnny Ryan's Wet Market. Fucking hell, he loves a controversial title, that kid, doesn't he? Readers with a sensitive nature would best avoid this because it's full of crazy shit. I've written in my notes. There you go.
Mate, that's an understatement. It's
yeah. It's what looks to be the start of a tale of terror, and it's going to be a different story in each issue. When we look at things, it's like it's a big, much bigger than 2000 AD, if you see what I mean. So it's a big comic thing. So this is what happens in it. A mum and her daughter happen across an old lady, and the old lady has fallen over, and she appears to have hurt herself. And The daughter doesn't want to help this old lady because she says she smells, but the woman somehow is helped by them. So they help the old lady. They take her to a van. She's got a van, which is already a signal, isn't it? This is going to go wrong. And suddenly the woman comes to. She hasn't really got a bad leg, and she stuns them with a taser, and they wake up in her basement. And the mum is tied to a pole with one of those, like those cycle things. You can, like a hook, sort of bolt thing. And they put it around her neck, and she's on the pole and tied to this pole. And they put the daughter in a dog cage. And they said, "What do you want? What are we here for? Why have you captured us and trapped us like this?" And she says, "All I want you to do is to fuck my son. His name is Stephen." Turns out that Stephen is a mess. I think you compared him down to that bloke in RoboCop who's fallen in the toxic mess.
Yes,
toxic waste.
He's kind of this grotesque.
Yeah. He's just a mass of sores and boils, and he can't walk, and he's in a wheelchair, and he can't really talk. He just sort of says weird things. And if you hadn't realised already, at this point, the book goes fucking massively off the deep end.
Yeah,
and just like goes crazy. So the old woman says to the mum, "Look, you're gonna fuck my son," and she says, "I'm not gonna fuck your son." So she starts torturing the child who is in a cage, and eventually the woman gives in. Here are a few of the highlights that I wrote down that I thought you might like. Mum doing a striptease for the monster son because she can't get him hard.
Did you just say that we might like?
Yeah, which you're gonna like. So
Jesus Christ.
The mum sort of eventually says, "All right, stop torturing my daughter. I'll do it for you." And she puts her hand in to where his knob would be, and she pulls out a load of worms and spiders. And so she's having trouble getting him hard. So the woman who's kidnapped them, the sort of granny mum character, says, "You got to do a striptease." So she goes, "Okay, well, because you got to get him hard." And she says, "I'll put." She says, "Here you go." She goes, "Well, there's no music. I can't dance." She says, "I've got a Susan Boyle CD," which they put on.
Jesus Christ.
Susan Boyle.
Fucking.
At one point, the kids gets put in a microwave. That wasn't nice. At one point, the mum says to the woman who's trying to have sex with this weird mutant kid, says, "I can't get it in." So the mum spits on her own son's knob to lube it up.
Right, okay. And this was how much?
15, 16 pounds, I think. Then you get a shot, quite a close-up shot of a granny bumhole. That's something I ask for in all of my comics. And then, gone.
I just kept on reading it, forget it can't get worse than this, surely. And then
it does.
It does. And then you say that over and over again till you get to the end, which is like, my God.
He's just fucking with us, man. He's just playing with us. He's just trying to do the worst possible thing he can do in comics and get it posted. It makes me laugh that we've got this going on in one set of comics, and yet some more mainstream comics, they can't bear to someone have an emblem on their chest. It's like, there is an appearance of Queen Latifah in this. That's nice. I know you're a big fan, V.
Well, that's what we were saying about the innovation and the actual movement coming from small press and indie stuff, because effectively the bigger boys seem to have been, for the most part, neutered.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they really do seem to be, don't they?
Yeah.
But you got Johnny Ryan off doing literally fucking crimes to humanity in comics. It jumps between you being absolutely fucking repulsed and thinking, I can't take this in public. What if I died and someone found this in my house? So
it's almost like a kind of like a farce, like those sitcom farce, but like absolutely grotesque and
it's done in sort of sub-viz style art.
Yeah,
it's almost childlike in the cartooning. It really is harking back to some really crazy underground comics that we've seen years ago. If this is the sort of thing that you think you'll like, then go and hand yourself in the police station firstly. But otherwise, you can go to themansionpress.com and buy a copy. There are some in Gosh. They've sort of got an import stamp on them, so they're a bit more expensive. But yeah, you can go and get this, and it's called, I'll tell you the whole title again, A Tale of Terror, Issue 1, Fuck My Son, by Johnny Ryan.
There you go, folks.
Hell of a comic.
I don't know what to say. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what to say.
I never want to meet him.
you know what I should say?
Yeah, what?
This Friday,
Oh yeah.
the 28th, we're doing a surprise drink and draw for the Awesome Comics podcast.
Yeah.
Organised by this chucklehead, Tom Curry.
Hey.
Will be on the Slack and on the socials, but put aside this Friday for another drink and draw. We only did one a couple weeks ago, was it? Yeah.
Yeah. Nice little low key one we'll have.
This
Come
one's
along
to
and have a
get
chuckle.
back into sync. So the last Friday of every month or so. So do come along, say hello. Last time was a good laugh.
Yeah.
Yes. So Friday, 28th of April.
I think we kick about 7:30. Is that correct? The details will be on the Slack.
Yeah, 7:30 normally, isn't it? Yeah.
Pop along, do some doodling, have a bit of a chat, talk some comics with a lovely group of people. What more do you need? What more do you need? And
I'm thinking of heading up to Glasgow Comic Con at the start of June if anyone's going to be there as well. So let me know.
Nice.
It'd be good to hear if they do have some guests. I know they're
just waiting to hear on the guests so I can decide.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that maybe we'll announce at some point on the show, if there's anything about this week's show you want us to talk about, talk more about, or if you've got any events or any charity events or any sort of things you want us to discuss, there's several different ways you can get in touch with us. You can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on social media @theawesomepod. We'll be putting some shout outs, sometimes asking you lovely people for questions, recommendations. You know, we love it when the community gets involved in the show, and we'll always put a shout out for you if you ask for it. If you ask nicely, just watch yourselves. Don't be too cheeky.
Vince don't like it when you're cheeky, DB.
Yeah, well, you know, there is a line. And the nice guy only goes so far, and but there's full of nice people on the Slack group though. So please join the Awesome Comics Podcast Slack group where there's loads of different channels.
It's all kicking off while we've been talking. There's a big chat going on at the moment.
Yes, there's talk about there's a general chat. There's chat about the show. There's chat about crowdfunding. There's chat about art. There's art threads. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and it's wonderful. Just actual sort of positive community chatter, and everyone's welcome. All right, just be there. Be good people. That's all we ask. Be good people and show some love for comics. That's all we ask.
Can I give a little pointer for people who contact us with press releases? We're all now in the emails as well, and I get them personally as well. If you're going to send us a press release, and I follow it up with a question or a request, then please reply.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, that is fair. Although Tony, you sounded really sad. I don't know why I'm laughing about that. Please reply.
We got an email saying, "Oh, any chance you promoting this?" I said, "Yeah, no problem. You got a copy. Send us a copy. Have a look at it." And nothing. And then a couple of weeks later, "Oh, by the way, get any chance?" And I'm thinking, this is just a cut and paste. I'm ignoring this now.
Our address has been punched into like MailChimp, and they just find it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Other services do.
And thank you for thinking of us. And thank you for listening to us, whether it was on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, leave a review, say some nice things about the show and everything that we talk about, because it really does help the algorithm, etc. And also a big thank you to all our new listeners. We've had a little bit of a bump ever since we hit 400.
I know. It's gone up by about 100.
Yeah, so if you're new to the show, thank you very much for the continued support. And we will endeavour to give you lots of entertainment and hopefully...
I'd love to hear some of the listeners' thoughts on this episode and Wolf's comic in particular.
Yeah, I hope it starts a decent, nice conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yes. And if you listen to us on any other networks, such as Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife, what other networks are we on, Tony?
Yesterday I did a shit like a magician's hanky.
But what other networks are we on?
We're on Pod. It's like I'd stamped on a tube of toothpaste.
Well, if you found the feed on there, probably don't email us.
It was almost going to be Pod looked like Rolf Harris eating a banana, but I didn't go for that one.
Fucking Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. I mean, that's one way to fucking kill the momentum of a show, man. Well done. Well done. I hope you're pleased with yourself. I hope you're very, very pleased
I'm
with yourself.
always pleased when Dan chuckles.
Oh, God.
Oh my God. We're gonna have to, we had some thoughts about like this shopping trip and going into Forbidden, but I think we're going to save them.
Can you say that for next week?
Yes,
Yeah.
Next week we have got a Three Amigos show. It's going to be us, and we'll put a shout out to you if there's anything you want us to discuss coming up, and what we'll probably. I'm not going to say probably. We're probably going to rant about something.
Well, thanks to Kieran for the suggestion around the shout out. I'm not doing that one.
Yeah.
He knows.
He knows. But no, be sure to check us out next week for more great comic talk. And where can people find us online, etc.? Tony?
Neverondanything.com.
Dan?
You can find me on Twitter at Vanguard Comic. I've not got a blue tick. And you can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com.
Nice.
Or buy any of the comics at DZ Publishing.
Yeah.
Oh,
nice. Well, you haven't mentioned that before.
I don't mention that.
You haven't mentioned that before. You should mention it more often. You can find me on social media at Jester Diablo. And in all seriousness, thank you very much to Wolf for joining us this week. And once
cheers,
again,
dude.
if there was anything we talked about on this week's show that maybe you were personally touched by, Tony, do you want to put out the links again?
Yeah, so you can go to mind.org.uk. Got a great organisation. And I know DUI3 raises money, as does a lot of the tribute books around that. Yeah. You can contact the Samaritans in the UK at 116-123, and they're a great bunch of people as well.
Nice. So I think it's just prevalent to say, wherever you are, if you're listening to this, we hope you're happy, healthy, and doing okay. Because in all seriousness, we really appreciate every single one of you that listens to this show.
We do.
Yeah, I mean we're just three idiots who get together and usually just take the piss out of each other for an hour and a half. If only you heard the stuff that doesn't go into the edit. But no, seriously, wherever you are,
Johnny Ryan blush.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes, but we hope you're doing well, reading comics, making loads of comics, because all of us, including Tony, we love you, don't we, Tony?
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Well, darling, do you love me? Yeah,
What's the option? Yeah, why not? In a way.
Husband of the year.
I do at the moment.
In a way.
In a way.
The Alan Partridge response. Yeah. You know, I really love you. In a way.
I think every 2 episodes we get an Alan Partridge reference.
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Even if it's just me trying to be a presenter and Tony going, "You've gone full Partridge."
Yeah.
Anyway, while we're going off to figure out what the hell we're going to talk about next week, have a brilliant week. Read loads of comics. Keep making brilliant comics. And as always, what should they do, guys?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
See ya.
See ya.